They say you stop fearing the dark when you've worked underground long enough. You learn to fear the sounds that shouldn't be there, especially the knocking, when the whole shift is frozen and you know for sure nobody should be swinging a hammer. My name is William McCoy. I worked the mine for 38 years. Started as a mule boy hauling coal cars in the late 60s, ended up running shifts in the deepest headings. Of what I have seen down there, a third can be blamed on booze, a third on plain stupidity, and the rest doesn't fit any safety manual or inspector's report. Our mine sat high in the Colorado Rockies, where Cornish and Welsh hardrock men had chased silver veins a century before we ever broke ground. All that's left of them now are faded names in the old company ledgers, and one peculiar habit that never died. Nobody whistled underground. Not because it distracts the crew, like the safety posters claimed, but because you don't know who or what might whistle back. On paper, our accident record read like any other. Methane pops, bad roof, men too tired or too cocky to follow procedure. Everything filed neat in triplicate, blamed on human error or equipment failure. But in the lamp room after shift, over lukewarm coffee, the old-timers told a different tally, one that matched the empty pegs where helmets never came back. They spoke of the Tommyknockers in low voices, those little men who lived in the rock itself. Cornish miners brought the belief over on the boats, said the knockers were spirits of dead miners, or maybe older things that owned the mountain before any pick ever touched it. Leaving bread in the niches, a crust or a biscuit, and they'd tap warnings before a fall. Forget or mock 'em, and the taps turned to tricks, tools vanishing, lights failing, or worse. I listened to those tales as a young buck, nodded polite, but figured it for immigrant superstition. Gas makes noises, rock shits, men die, simple as that. Until the mine started talking back to me. It was my third year in, 1971. Summer heat baking on the surface, but 1,000 feet down it was always the same. Damp cold that worked into your bones. We were driving a new lateral off the 500 level, chasing a promising quartz stringer the geologists swore held silver. Shift was winding down, most of the crew surfacing, when the main power cable faulted out. Ventilation dropped first, just a softening of the constant whoosh like someone easing off a throttle. Then the big lights guttered yellow and died, leaving only the blue-white stab of our cap lamps cutting the dust. I was alone in a blind heading, final checking the last set of timbers before calling it in. Radio crackled once, foreman barking orders up top, then static, the kind that hums like distant rain on tin. The air thickened without the fans, carrying that sharp tang of wet stone and machine oil. I played my beam along the fresh face, solid granite laced with quartz, no cracks showing, timber snug. That's when I heard it. Single, clear, a small metallic ting, like a 1-pound hammer glancing off pipe. Not from the face, not echo off the ribs, from inside the wall itself, maybe 10 feet in from where I stood. I froze, beam steady on the spot, listened. Nothing but my breather and the faint drips somewhere behind. Then again, ting, long pause, ting, a hair lower in the rock, testing. No drills running, no one else on this stub. The power was dead. "Joe, that you monkeying back there?" I keyed the radio. Static hissed back, threaded with something else, a soft, even rasp like breath on a cold mic. The taps came regular now. 3 measured hits, pause, repeat, climbing slow up the hanging wall, nimble as a squirrel on bark. I tracked it with the light, smooth bolted face, gray granite unmarred, no loose steel, no hanging slough. Rock doesn't tap like that, not with purpose. They stopped, chest high, 3 crisp raps, then dead quiet, expectant. My pick handle felt heavy in my grip. Whatever lived in there, it knew I was listening, wanted an answer. I didn't give one. Backed off slow, boots careful on the ties, never turning full away. A breath or faint chuckle slipped through the stone at arm's length. Walked steady, neck crawling, pausing every 20 feet to listen. Silence followed. Surface was chaos,
Diesel generator thrashing, men chain-smoking by the collar, cursing the grid. Anyone drilling bottom in the last 10 minutes? Blank stares. Everything shut down clean, Bill. I nodded, said nothing. Wrote it off to isolation jitters, bad air playing tricks. But driving home that night, past the dark tipple silhouette against stars, I remembered the Cornish talk. Tommyknockers warned polite. Ignore at peril. Slept with the bedroom window cracked, listening for taps in the floorboards.
Weeks passed, normal drill and blast, muck out, square set and lag. Knock stayed memory, like a half-remembered dream. Shift life ground on, sweat-soaked, coal dust into coffee, the quick lies in the dry house. Then, small wrongs started. My wedge set vanished from the niche by the station, clean gone. Found it next morn balanced perfect on a high rib, 40 feet back where no man climbs. Gremlins, the hoistman laughed. I didn't. New kid assigned my stringer, Jimmy Ruiz, 22, fresh from surface labor, all mouth and no reverence. Whistled pop tunes in the cage down, flicked butts into cracks, pocketed sparkly quartz for the girl. Old Pete pulled me aside. He's meat, Bill. They're watching. Jimmy's cap lamp stuttered odd. Flicker, flicker, only when he hugged walls, steady elsewhere. Radio grabbed ghost taps between calls, Morse-like, but no code I knew. Once I caught peripheral, low shape scooting rib shadow and lamp bounce. Whip head, empty, just wet gleam on stone. Pete cornered me lunch. Cornwall rule, bread for the knockers. Cornish left crusts and dead ends. Tommyknockers took it, gave fair warning. I waved it off. Mice-eat bread, Pete, rock shifts. He fixed me steady. Mice don't sort your tools, or pick boys who mock. Jimmy whistled louder next days. Tools moved meaner, his shovel wedged upright in overhead crack, waiting to brain him. Night shift, his radio spat my name, in Jimmy's voice, 10 minutes before he clocked in. I warned him straight. Quit the whistling, leave the pretty rocks. He grinned. Superstition, McCoy, show me the little men. Pete crossed himself. I felt the mountain listen. Week later, they tasked us that heading, the quartz stub where I first heard. Two-man tail crew, probing a pinch for payor. Air heavy, timbers creaking soft under load. Jimmy chattered ahead, beam dancing walls like a kid's toy. Knock returned. 3 taps, pause. 3 from the face now, insistent, pulling inward. Shut it, I hissed. That's your warning. He laughed, echo off stone. Win, Bill, or rats with hammers. He pushed ahead solo. Just peek this undercut. Radio keyed, voice cocky. My gut nodded. Back now, procedure. Static answered. Then frantic clatter. Dozens, small hammers wild, feed shredded to blank hiss. Crew scrambled. We drilled probe holes, hand-steeled the fall. Cleared cautious, no body. Just Jimmy's crushed hard hat, lamp twisted like squeezed toothpaste in rubble dust. His pick lay perfect beside, untouched. Official report crisp next week. Roof fall due, human factors. Victim deviated assigned route, case closed. No mention empty niches. No bread crust found scattered where Pete swore he'd left them. Break room went quiet after. Pete wouldn't face that cut again. Old Ivan crossed deep 3 minutes straight. Whispers grew. He followed the knockers home. They claimed him for the whistling. Jimmy's widow got comcheck, plaque in the memorial case. I saw his face nights, cocky grin swallowed by dark. Should have dragged him back bodily. State inspector came, measured, sampled gas, nodded at our logs. Classic, he said. Boy got eager, punched wheat ground, happens. Signed off clean, company breathed easy. But down dry house, truth circulated different. Crew left extra crust now. Stale donuts, biscuit ends, in blind corners. No one whistled. Tool stayed put. Pete swore he heard faint tapping approval some nights. I kept Jimmy's quartz shard from his locker, turned into my palm nights, wondering what debt it carried. Mine quieted, almost normal. Then the big water hit.
The office moved like a thing that never sleeps. Forms passed from hand to hand, stamps dropped in line, and a polite man with a clipboard who smiled at the wrong moments. They measured the fall, tested the bolts, took photos with white collars and blue lights that flattened everything into a diagram. On paper, Jimmy was a lesson in haste. In the locker room, he was a hole you could trip over. They gave me the standard questions. Where were you? What did you hear? Did you see anyone deviate? I answered like a man who'd learned how to speak the language of forms, short, precise, while the shard in my pocket cut a small line on my thigh when I shifted. Inside, the ledger of the mind kept a different count. empty bunk, unpaid coffee cups, the way the drill marks ended at an odd angle where the dust had been scrubbed. Old Pete sat at the corner table more than usual, hands wrapped around a mug like a relic. He told stories quieter now, adding small provisions to them, where he'd left a crust that had been gone when he returned, a lamp that found its own path back to its owner. Men started bringing stale rolls down with their lunch, small bargained offerings that felt ridiculous and urgent at once. There were visits from men in suits with clipboards who asked whether the crew had been trained and whether safety checks had been logged. They nodded at the right times and moved the conversation to liability and procedure because that's what keeps payroll calm. They did not ask who had been the last to speak to Jimmy in the locker room or whether anyone had seen him pull something bright from his pocket and smile at it like a private man. I combed the heading where he'd gone, alone, looking for small facts a stamp can't take. A faint smear of oil on timber where a hand had leaned, a cigarette butt tucked in a nail, someone's lazy habit, a scraping on a bolt where a boot had ground, little human fingerprints in a place the reports called anonymous. The rumor mill does what it does best. It gives faces to holes. Some swore he'd been stupid enough to try and carry a bit of the vein up as a keepsake. Others said the old ways called him, some debt called for payment. I found a pair of gloves his size down an abandoned ventilation drift, gloves that smelled of sweat and coffee. I did not touch them. I left them to be cataloged with other laws. At night, I stood at the fence by the tipple and watched stars burn sharp above the hulks of conveyors. People outside that work will ask questions, blunt and loud, the kind that need answers like medicine. I had none that would do. You keep your mouth short when your answers start to make rooms uncomfortable. The company's internal memo came back sterile. Additional training, reinforcement of route discipline, flagged the area for inspection. They put up bright tape and a sign, restricted area. Men avoided the face not because they feared minutes in a ledger, but because their years had taught them to read the silence at that cut. We were told to move on. Life under the lights moves by telling itself to move on. But the mind does not forget debts by command. Small things continued. A miner's lunchbox found in a place it could not have been carried. A ration of sugar placed where no one had been working. Sometimes in the lamp room, when the air was thick with steam and tired, I would hear a single clear tap in the empty space above the benches. 3 beats, then the muted scrape of a chair being pulled back. I started to dream in a language of rhythm, 3-step patterns that resolved nothing and asked everything. The men changed subtly, their jokes thinning at the edges, politeness becoming sharper. A foreman who used to swear in the daylight began to cross himself on the way past the dark. We all became keepers of a humility that looks like superstition until you stand in a heading with nothing but stone and the echo of something deliberate. One evening, Ivan, the bolter, a mountain of a man who had broken his share of ribs and never once cried, sat down beside me and tapped the table twice with his finger. "No more whistling in the showers," he said, and grunted like a verdict. He did not joke. He told a story then, of his grandfather's maid who had ignored a knock and woke the next day tangled in his clothes, 2 teeth knocked out and no memory of walking. "They don't need much," he said. "They need courtesy." I began to prepare differently for each descent, more careful checks, more spare batteries, a small private handful of biscuits in my pocket like a silent offering. The shard in my jacket warmed with the motion, nothing supernatural, only the heat a metal keeps when it spends days next to skin. If this was superstition, it was a superstition that made men listen. Time moves in minds by checks and by rights. The company counted days by output. We counted moments by the knocks. And so it was that when command called us to the big leak weeks later, we were a little more uneasy than the forms could describe, but ready in ways they couldn't account for.
The pager went off exactly 4 weeks after Jimmy. It was 2:17 in the morning. Rain beat the trailer roof like buckshot. Wind rocked the mountains. An old fault woke up. Water ran through stopes dry for 20 years. Shift boss called immediately. His voice was thick with sleep. "McCoy, get to the collar in 25 minutes. Water chased 4 men on 500 level. Move." I grabbed my gear. Jimmy's quartz shard was already warm in my pocket. The road was black with rain. Headlights slid on wet asphalt. Mountains groaned in wind. The mine loomed as a dark mouth. Parking lot empty except my truck. Dry house smelled diesel and old coffee. Coffee poured from dirty thermos, thick as oil. Lips burned hot metal, bitter taste stayed on tongue. Foreman set a scarred table, face gray under lamps, laid wet maps down. 4 men trapped behind fallen timber, water waist deep, pressure building. Check path, pull if alive. No heroes, he added low. Voice cracked last word. He remembered Jimmy's empty peg. I nodded, took map, walked to cage. Manrider took us 2 miles down. Water poured shaft mouth. Cage swayed shaft wind. Air grew heavy meter by meter. River mud mixed oil, settled lungs permanent. Pumps roared above beasts. Echoes multiplied flooded drifts. Radio screamed voices over voices. Water knee-deep, lights failing. Can't hear, repeat. Pressure rising, air short. Command barked coordinates, no trust maps past first bend. 500 level narrowed world. Green water slapped timber bellies. Walls seeped streams. Air bit teeth wet stone. Last signal behind fall. Water roared where men breathe. Task simple, check path, pull if pulse. Started by rules. Steel checked walls, pick handle tapped overhead. Chalk marked safe line. Air heavy moisture. Lamps cut yellow fog. Knock started then. 3 hits right wall. Quiet, distant, old clock. Beat steady my work. Patient, no hurry. First proof not chance. Overhead rock fell. 1 second before step. Quartz dust sifted where head was. Water seeped crack ahead. Map said dry. Knock warned perfect. Not gas, not echo. Rock doesn't warn chosen. Listened closer. Knock repeated. 3 hits. Clear, no mistake. Fork came sudden. Map said both solid. Loud knock pulled left. Fast, inviting, happy almost. Radio crackled voice. We're here! Hurry! Cold, water rising! Command screamed. Straight, break timber! Quiet knock pulled right. Old timbers rotted from water. Air smelled like sealed cellar. I stopped at the fork and listened to both rhythms. I thought of the bread left in niches. Cornish miners paid with crumbs and survived. Maybe this was help. The rhythm changed suddenly. The knock became demanding. It pulled toward a dead end sealed for 100 years. My hair stood on end. This was not leading to the exit. This was leading to a trap. I went left anyway because of duty and orders. Water reached my thighs. It sucked at my boots. Timbers creaked as they bent. The knock doubled behind me. It begged me to turn back. The radio spoke in Jimmy's voice. Bill, this way, safe. The voice sat on my shoulder. It breathed on my neck through the collar. It laughed in that half-familiar way. My brain wanted to believe it. My body remembered the empty peg. I gave no answer. Signal lights flashed suddenly. A shadow appeared in the light. It was low and wide with a helmet. The lamp cast no shadow. It stood 30 feet away. It watched me calm. The eyes gleamed wrong. The gaze was older than the mine. It was gone in a blink. A trace remained in my eyes. The left path led to green flood. Timbers cracked under pressure. The right path was sealed. It smelled of burnt bone. Both were traps. Jimmy's voice sounded sweet. Durango bar? Beer waiting? Pain gripped my stomach. Guilt sharpened. I whispered, Jimmy? The knock exploded with joy. Small hammers celebrated. I killed the lamp. I killed the radio. Dark took all man-made light. The mine spoke truth. Cracks sounded above like lightning. Water neared from left. Loud knock went quiet. Quiet knock came from right wall. It was calm. It was homey. I bit palm hard. Blood and salt hit tongue. Pain cleared my head. I followed the quiet knock. Hands stayed on walls slow. Boots followed the rhythm. Left path collapsed behind. Water chased 20 feet back. Voices ahead became real. They were human. They begged for rope. Found 4 against wall. Lamps dim like coals. Skin gray from water. They were led by false sounds. Easy paths to traps. Pulled one by one. Ropes. Breaths shared. Bloody palm gripped tight. Last man out. Sealed passage side. Ground settled slow. Beast rolled in sleep. Not collapse. Doors closed. Surface logged settling. I knew the truth. Top praised actions. Awards on wet shirts. No one noticed blood on the rope. Passage taped forever. Pete gave biscuit silent. I said dead paid. State inspector arrived 2 days after the rescue operation. He drove a shiny pickup truck through our mud without getting stuck. His stiff suit smelled of aftershave and city air that never saw coal dust. His clipboard was thicker than a full shift log. All his questions were typed neatly on company letterhead. He walked the 500 level with the engineers.
They measured water levels carefully. They tested air samples thoroughly. He nodded at the cribbing collapse as if he'd seen it all in textbooks before. They took statements in the office trailer. I was called last. My coffee sat cold in a chipped mug. Jimmy's empty locker pegs stared at me from across the room. Where exactly did you deviate, McCoy? Why did you ignore the direct egress route? His voice stayed flat. The pen hovered like judgment waiting to fall. I answered with precision. The ground sounded unstable. I followed proven ground instead. I omitted the tap that chose my steps. I omitted the voice that wasn't really Jimmy. Truth was too heavy for their forms. The company report landed a week later. It was 12 pages, double-spaced. Geological event compounded by saturation. Rescue team demonstrated superior situational awareness. They praised my instinctive course correction. They never asked what instinct spoke in perfect Cornish rhythm. Jimmy was added permanently to the memorial board. His faded photo sat there. Brass plate read, James Ruiz, 1971 to 1982. His peg stayed empty forever. The dry house changed subtly after that night. Men left crusts deliberately now. They wedged stale donuts into timber cracks. They placed biscuit heels on forgotten ledges. No one ever spoke the name aloud. Pete just nodded when I crumbled a heel from my lunch. I left it in a niche by the manway. The morning after, the crumb was gone, clean. There were no mice tracks anywhere. The lamp I dropped on the prior shift hung perfect on my peg. The battery was mysteriously full charged. Old Ivan started a new ritual. He tapped his helmet 3 times before the cage went down. Respect, he'd grunt if anyone asked. He never explained his grandfather's tale fully. The knockers sorted good ore from fools. They left silver nuggets for polite boys. Cornish lore described Tommyknockers as knee-high. They had beards to their boots. Their lamps never dimmed. They helped find lost tools. They warned of bad air. Greedy boys found picks bent mysteriously. Their powder got wet somehow. Roofs became eager to fall. Pete swore by a story from 1968. His partner had mocked the knockers openly. They found him next dawn wedged in overhead timber. He was alive, but his pants were gone. His teeth were bloody from the fall. Courtesy, Pete repeated, always. One lunch, Hoistman Roy passed a flask under the table. His face was scarred from a methane flash 20 years back. Grandpa's rule from Cornwall, 1902 Silverton strike. Miners petitioned the company. They wanted to free the Tommyknockers when the shaft closed. Don't seal brothers underground. The company laughed. They sealed anyway. The next crew found picks crossed in every niche. The rich silver veins stayed barren for 10 years.
I kept Jimmy's quartz shard close. I thumbed it on nights when sleep dodged me. It felt heavier some days. It grew warm unnaturally, like pocketed coal fresh from the face. Dreams came regular now. 3 taps would wake me suddenly. Floorboards creaked under no weight. A shadow stood low in the doorway, gone by morning. My wife noticed the change. The mind's getting you, Bill. She never pushed for details. She knew questions without answers kill slower than falls. Shift life adjusted slowly over weeks. The stub got taped permanent. The sign rusted. Danger, no entry. Chains were double-wrapped heavy. Foreman rerouted headings to give wide berth. He called it geotech caution. The crew knew better than that. They avoided whistling completely. They spoke low past the pinch point. Production dipped the first month. Men worked more careful than before. They listened between drill whine for taps that approved or warned. Bar stories grew richer after a few pints. Young bucks heard it all from old hands. Knockers came from Wales tin mines first. Little men with eternal lamps. They helped find tools. They warned of gas. Greedy ones got picks bent, powder wet, roofs that kissed skulls. Roy's flask story spread fast. The petition from 1902 became legend. Miners wrote a letter to the company. They begged to release the Tommyknockers. They're trapped like us. The company foreman laughed it off. Superstition. They sealed the shaft anyway. Next shift, every drill bit showed a crossed X. The rich veins stayed barren for a decade. The company ignored our rituals completely. They chased tonnage quotas hard as ever.
They posted new safety posters everywhere. Report hazards immediately. There was no box to check for polite knocking from sealed workings. No training covered voices mimicking dead partners. No protocol mentioned crusts and niches. We filled the gaps ourselves quietly. Crusts multiplied without discussion. Taps returned as polite single-3 rhythms. Work smoothed out unnaturally well. One dawn, while surfacing, the cage shuddered midway up the shaft. Lights flickered suddenly. Air went dead still all around. 3 clear taps echoed from the cage bottom, chest high. All 5 men froze in place. We exchanged looks without speaking. Helmets tipped in unison respect. The lights steadied immediately. The cage resumed smooth travel. The hoist man logged it as minor glitch electrical. We knew it was payment acknowledged and received. The state closed the file clean and simple. No violations noted. Enhanced monitoring recommended. Jimmy's comp check cleared fast. His widow moved stateside quiet. Life got tallied neat for outsiders. The underground ledger balanced different. Debts got noted careful. Crusts were accepted silent. Taps became conversational now. Shift boss pulled me aside at month's end. Heard good things about you, McCoy. Rescue lead on the next emergency call? I nodded automatic like always. I felt the shard pulse in my pocket as warning. I knew the next call wouldn't ask permission first. The mind kept score, patient and steady. We tallied our daily shifts.
Years passed since that night on 500 level, but the mind never let go completely. I quit after 38 years, not from fear exactly, but because a man's tally fills up eventual. Surface life came quiet, a sagging porch house near the tipple, close enough to hear the pit breathe on certain nights when wind blew right. Furnace clicks out late sometimes, polite patient knock through floorboards and joists, like a visitor checking if I'm awake. The quartz shards stayed with me always, thumbed smooth now, warm certain nights without reason. Dreams didn't stop. 3 taps, regular as shift horn. Floorboards creak, no weight. Low shadow, doorway frame, gone morning light. Wife passed 5 years back, cancer, quiet. Never spoke mine much, understood anyway. Questions without answers kill slower than falls or floods. New miners came generations after. Young faces, clean helmets, company safety vests bright. Heard old hands still teach crusts, niches. No whistling showers. Taps mean something. Production, steady, good. Taps, conversational, polite background rhythm. Company logs, improved safety culture. Underground ledger says different. Debts noted careful. Balance held delicate. Town remembers Jimmy different. Memorial plaque, town hall, annual dinner his name. Kids hear sanitized version. Brave rescue, hazard contained, and chapter. Sit near old hands bar though, different tale plain spoken. Rock asks closer than think. Knock sometimes warning, sometimes score settling slow. Mine patient as stone itself. Last descent unannounced 3 months back. Dream vivid, real. 500 level exact. Water green, lapping timber bellies. Fork waits. Loud knock left eager. Quiet, neighborly. Jimmy voice shoulder sweet. Bill, time see bar. Cold beer waiting. Shadow low, wide helmet, no shadow 30 feet. Eyes gleam, amused, ancient. Woke sweating, shard burning pocket handprint shape. Drove tipple fence next dawn. Stars burned sharp above conveyor hulks. Wind carried 3 taps clear shaft mouth. Measured, polite. Furnace clicked home same rhythm. No fear exactly. Understanding deep. Courtesy lasts. Debts compound interest, stone time. Quit notice sits desk unsigned still. Surface life thin now. Nights long. Knock patient visitor. No answer when ready. Mind tallies eternal. Men pass shifts. Ledger balances different currency. 3 taps say hello, good night, warning, all same. Listen close. Some nights porch chair rocks steady. Tipple silhouette against stars breathes regular. No 4 saved that night live families because deviation geometry. Taps courtesy. Jimmy peg empty memorial brass. Ledger notes payment crusts accumulated. Balance holds. Young miner stopped gas station last week. Clean face, new company vest. Heard stories, old-timer. Tommyknockers real? Smile polite, not mocking. Told plain, rock asks courtesy. Listen taps, leave crust. Live long shifts. Nodded serious. Yes, sir. Drove off straight shaft. Porch nights continue. Shard warm pocket faithful. 3 taps floorboards regular. Shadow doorway visits, furnace clicks conversational, mind patient teacher, courtesy currency eternal, listen close always.